Hello everybody and welcome back to the multiplayer project, where I realized there was a bit of a bug in this line of the database that I didn't cover in the last episode, and that's specifically because we definitely did make these capitalized in the database. So we definitely need to do this. There we go. That should help. Now this should properly work, in theory. So there's that fixed, and what we're going to be doing in this episode is actually creating the accounts. Now we have the function for that, or rather the method for that, in the database manager, but we don't have any way to properly do that. So, first things first, we're going to go into our client project here, and we're going to go into our scenes folder, and we're going to create a new scene, and this is going to be lobby scene. There we go. So a brand new scene here, and we're going to do a UI canvas. And then we'll hop into game view so that we can see kind of what the player would see. And I like to have it be, screen space overlay is perfectly fine for this usage here, but I like to have it be on scale with screen size, and have the reference resolution be 1080p, 1920 by 1080, and then set the screen match mode to expand. Excellent. So the canvas is now designed for 1080p screens, but it can scale up to, or down to, any resolution, assuming we set this up correctly. So we're going to do so. So the first thing we're going to do is, in the canvas, we're going to create an empty. And this will just be at 0, 0, and that's perfectly fine. We're going to change this, of course, to have it be a stretch though, and this is going to be just stretching across the entire screen, so setting all of these margins to 0 pixels. Having this be at a pivot point of 0.5 is perfectly fine, and we're going to call this the login screen. Excellent. Now, we're just going to put an image on that, so we will add a component image, and we could have just added this as an image, but this is perfectly fine. And I'm going to make this be a particular color, and this is a color that I've used previously. This kind of a blue-gray color. These are the actual values here, or the hexadecimal, if you're so interested. This is the color that we're just going to use for the backdrop. It's just a nice neutral blue. I like it. But then again, I'm colorblind, so what do I know? So we're going to need to do a couple of things here. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves a UI button text mesh pro. And that'll pop open this TMP importer. All we need to do is hit import TMP essentials, and that'll just get us better text than the default text, because the default text doesn't look very good when you zoom in on it. However, here, I'll actually show you the difference. Let's create a regular UI button, and we'll just look at this here, and this is the default text. Look at how disgusting that is. This is the Text Mesh Pro text. It's so much better. Absolutely so much better. So we're going to delete the original text type, and we're going to just change this ever so slightly so that this button is going to be the create account button. There we go. And I'm going to change this to be a couple of things. First off, we're going to have this set up in such a way where, well, it's going to be anchored to the center of the screen, which it already is. So if we were to, you can see we're on free aspect here. If we were to change the resolution of the screen, you can see it remains centered if we change it horizontally and if we change it vertically. So that's what we want. But we want this to be positioned slightly differently, so we're just going to offset this by 120 pixels. Excellent. We're also going to widen it a little. Instead of 360, we're going to set it to 300. There we go. And now we are going to make the color of this button just be red. Perfect. Now, I would like for this to be outlined in white, And I'm wondering, okay, yeah, I did just use the outline previously, because I was like, how did I do that before? I didn't notice the script. But yeah, there's just the outline script. This is a default built-in part of Unity. And we are just going to take this up to full alpha and white. And I'm also going to make the effect distance be 2 and -2. There we go. Fantastic. Now, this text here we're going to need to modify, obviously. I want to make this text be white. There we go. And we're going to change the font size. We're going to make the font size a little smaller, down to 24. We're not going to change the font right now. We're just going to leave that at the default. But this should be fine. So we're going to change this to be create account. Fantastic. So there's our create account button, quote unquote done. It doesn't do anything, but it's there. We're just going to duplicate that. Place it slightly above, and we are going to call this the login button. Excellent. And we are going to position that at a Y of -80, so 40 pixels up, and we're just going to change the text on that to read log in. Excellent. There we go. These should be, by the way, parented to the login screen, like that. That's something I should have been doing. And then we're going to create a UI, and this is going to be an input field text mesh pro. We're going to create this right here, position Y, -40, and this is going to be largely the same in terms of its dimensions. It's going to be a width of 300, and then we're going to go into here and modify in the text area the placeholder text, and that is going to read password. It's a little hard to see here, but if we maximize on play, and this isn't going to try to connect to the server because we don't have the net manager in here yet. So if we run this, then you can see password there, and it's gonna... we can type whatever we want in it. Okay, that's fine. But we're gonna need to modify this ever so slightly because there are a couple of things that I would like to do. First off, this content type here. This content type should be changed to password, so that when we play this and fill in our password, it doesn't display it. It just goes like this. Perfect. Now we've got a bit of an issue potentially with our hitboxes here, I'm noticing, but no, that seems to be fine. I don't know, maybe there's just something kind of awkward. Let's see, is there anything else we need on the password field? Let's go to the password field here, and we should call this the password field, like so. Let's see, it's font size 14, that's fine. We'll put in a character limit of 100. I don't think we, strictly speaking, need that, but that should be fine. Okay, there we go. And now we will go ahead and create one more input field text mesh pro. And this is going to be located exactly where it's at 000, width of 300. And we are going to change the placeholder text here to read account name. Excellent. And then in terms of the field information over here, I don't think we, strictly speaking, need anything other than changing the content type to alphanumeric, because we're not going to support having symbols in account names. So just having alphanumeric should be absolutely fine. And I don't think we need anything else here. Although, there is one little script that I would like to put in. So let's go into our scripts folder, and we'll create... I didn't mean to show in Explorer. We'll create a folder, and this folder is going to be called UI. And in here, we are going to do another folder, and we're going to call this lobby. And then in here, we're going to create a C# script, and we're going to call this tabflow. Because if we run this, and we select the account name field, we can type whatever we want, and then we hit tab, and nothing happens. Well, not nothing. It resets the blinking on the caret. So that just stops blinking while you're pressing tab. We don't want that. when you press tab, we want it to switch between these two fields. So that's what we're going to do for right now. We're going to fire up the tab flow, and we are going to... Actually, let's rename this before we get started. Let's call this the UI tab flow. We're going to close this because we're going to rename the file, and we'll let that load in, and we will do UI tab flow, since that has to equal the name of the class inside of it for a mono behavior. Excellent. Okay, is there anything we need here? Well, yes. We do not need system.collections or system.collections.generic, but we do need using unityengine.ui. Fantastic. And then all we need to do is public tmpro, and that's our text mesh pro namespace, tmp input field, next tab field, and then public button default enter, and then private tmpro dot tmp input field, this input field. Okay, that's all we need there, and then we're just going to have a quick start and update function for this. So private void start, and then all we need to do here is this input field equals get component tmpro, don't need a capital R there, dot tmp input field. Okay, so that's all we need in the start. And all that does is it grabs the input field component by default, so that we know what the input field is. So next we're going to need an update function, so we're going to do private void update. And these are, of course, just default called by Unity. So if this input field dot is focused, so we only want to check this if the input field has focus, otherwise we don't care. Then we need to check to see if the tab key is down, so if input.getKeyDown, and this only returns true on the frame that the tab is pressed. If you hold the tab, this won't do anything. Well, it'll do it on the frame that you press it, but it won't just constantly switch between the two every frame. If you wanted to do that, you would just use getKey as opposed to getKeyDown. So keycode.tab is the key that we're looking for. .tab. There we go. And then we need to say next tab field dot activate input field. Activate input field. There we go. And then we need to do next tab field dot select. Excellent. Then we need to check to see, also within if this input field dot is focused, we need to check to see if input dot get key down, and then we're going to check for keycode dot return, or we need to do this out here, or input dot get key down, keypad or keycode dot keypad enter. And actually IntelliSense already figured that out for us. That's a little creepy. IntelliSense. I'm guessing it's because the old code here is also in Visual Studio, and it's figured out that I'm just re-implementing it. I'm guessing that's what it's doing, and it's just like, well, this is going to be this. But we then need to say default enter with a T dot onClick dot invoke. So all that does is it triggers the on-click effect of the default enter button when you press either enter or the keypad enter. And when you press tab, it goes to the next tab field. And we'll have to assign that manually. So let's go in here. And we'll go to input field, and we'll remove the TMP here. There we go. Input field, was there a space? There was a space. We'll get rid of that. And we'll just do UI tab flow. We'll add that in, and the next tab field is the password field, and the default enter is the login button. Fantastic. So there's our initial UI there. There's a couple more things that we need on this screen, but this will do for now. So let's just, in the login, we'll just do a this object dot game object. Is there something here that we can just change quick to verify that this is working? Broadcast message? I have no idea what that would actually do. Or if there was like a debug.log we could send here, we could just try broadcast message. Button pressed. I have no idea where that'll output that. I've never used that before, but we'll find out. So we'll just play this and make sure our tab flow is working. So we're in the account name field, we hit tab. It switches to password, we hit tab. Oh, right, we didn't set it up for the password. I'm a moron. So we'll put in the UI tab flow here for the password, and we will set the next tab field to the input field and the default enter to the login button. Okay. So tab now flips between those two. Fantastic. And if we hit enter, I'm not sure exactly what it did. I don't think we captured that broadcast message, so it should have gone off regardless. And we will just get rid of this for right now. OnClick will be set up in a moment, but we do need 2 more things for our login screen here. We need a UI. Actually, we can just duplicate the login button for right now. And we are going to set this to be over in the bottom right, like this. And then we're going to have it be 20 pixels out on the X, but we need to change the actual anchors for this. So this is going to be a pivot point of 1 on the X and 0 on the Y. So we're going to now move it in 20 pixels from the edge of the screen and up 20 pixels from the bottom of the screen. There we go. And we're just going to change the text on this to read exit. And we're going to call this the exit button. We'll duplicate that and place this slightly above it, and we will place this at a position of, I believe it should be 60. Yes. A Y position of 60, and then the text here is going to read settings. We're not going to do anything with that settings button for quite a long time, but it'll be there. Okay, so this is our login screen. Very bare bones. That's all it's going to be. We do need to name this to settings button. There we go. And then we need to put in some form of a UI manager here. So we're going to create an empty, and we're going to call this the UI manager. And we are going to need to put a net manager in here eventually, but we'll get to that a little bit later. We'll put the UI manager right at the top, just so that we know where our managers are. That's where they're going to go, right at the top of the hierarchy. And then we're going to need to create ourselves a C# script. We're going to call this the UI manager. Excellent. And it didn't open it. Thanks, Visual Studio. Okay, so we're going to need a couple of things here. We are going to need these collections types, I think. Actually, no, we're not, are we? So we'll get rid of those, and we'll just say using Unity engine.ui. Okay. We'll get rid of this for right now. We may put those functions back later, but for now, they will just be removed. So we'll do a public net manager, because the UI manager is going to need to be able to communicate with the network manager. And then we're just going to do a little bit of organization here for the actual inspector. So we'll do a header, and we'll call this UI components. There we go. And we're going to do a public login screen, which we don't have. Login screen. We're going to need to be able to access some methods for the login screen. We'll comment that out for now, because that's not implemented. And then public lobby. Similarly, we'll comment that out for now. And there's one more commented out one that we're going to need here. Public game UI. Okay. Because all of these are commented out, we'll also comment out the header. Next up, we're going to do one more thing, and this is going to be an important thing that we're going to need. And actually, we might not get to account creation. This might just be like some initial UI creation here. We'll see how far we get here. Header, modal window, and then this is also going to be commented out. This is also not implemented. Although, actually, no, this doesn't need to be commented out because we manage the modal window entirely from the UI manager. It doesn't have its own script. So we're going to do a public game object modal window. Excellent. And then we're going to make a public tmpro.textmeshPro UGUI. That just gets the text for the UI system. Modal content. Excellent. And then public image, the modal spinner. And then public button, OK button. Excellent. Okay, so there are 3 methods that we're going to have for now in the UI manager. Most of this is going to be controlled in the login screen, in the lobby, in the game UI, but the UI manager holds references to those things and is like the overarching manager of the UI. That seems obvious, but it's true. So the first method that we're going to need here is public void show modal. And this is just going to pop up a window where you can't use anything else. You have to interact with that window. And it's just to display like critical information and things like that. So this is going to take 2 parameters, string content and bool spinner, but that's going to default to false. If you want a spinner, you put in a true. If you don't want a spinner, you can just omit that. So we're going to set the game object for modal window active with the setActive command. We're going to set that to true. And then we're going to say modal content dot text equals content. And then if spinner, then we're going to say modal spinner dot game object dot setActive true. And the OK button is going to be set active to false. So OK button dot game object dot set active false. Else, if there isn't a spinner, then we're going to need to do literally the opposite. So I'll just copy and paste this like so. This is going to be false, and then this one true. So that's all we got to do for the modal, and we'll just be able to call that to show whatever we want. There's 2 more things that we're going to, or rather only 1 more function that we're going to implement here, and that is public void hide modal. And that's just going to say modal window dot set active false. It just turns it off. That's all we got to do for now for the UI manager. Okay, so we'll put that script in here. Fantastic. We don't have a net manager right now, and I'm going to leave it that way. Right now, we don't need a net manager until we are actually trying to connect. So we'll leave it like that, but we do need to make the modal window next. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and create ourselves, not an empty, but we're going to create, no, not an empty. I literally just said that. We're going to create an image. And this is going to be set to stretch across the whole screen. Like this. We want it to cover literally everything. We'll make the color be black, but we're going to reduce the alpha to 128. So when the modal is up, it kind of grays everything out. And that's also going to be raycast, so that is going to block everything from being utilized. This modal window should always be at the bottom of the canvas. So we're going to call that the modal window. There we go. And that's all we have to do there for now. Of course, we do need to put a couple more things into this. And we are going to put in an image here. So a UI image. And this is going to be centered like this. This is exactly fine. But we want to put in a couple of different things. So first things first, we want to make sure that this is black. And then we want to put in an outline. This outline is literally the same. Full alpha, white, 2, and -2. Then we want to put in a vertical layout group. And do we want to change anything in this? Yes, we do. We want to put in a little bit of padding and spacing. 20 pixels on each side, and a spacing of 20 pixels. We don't want to force expand the children, but we do want the child to control size. And then, all we want to do is put in a content size fitter. And we want to set this to preferred size here and here. And now you can see that it preferred to drop it down to 40 by 40. That's fine, because we need to put in a couple of things. But first we'll name this background. And then as children of this, we will put in a UI text mesh pro. And you can see when we put that in, it resized this. So that's fine. We are going to set this font size to 24. We don't need it to be at 36. In fact, 24 is probably still on the big side. We'll set this to be centered, like so. And then what else do we need? Well, we can just change this to whatever we want. For right now, we'll put a placeholder message in here. This is a content. Excellent. And you can see as this grows, so too does the window. And also, if we go to a new line like this, hello, it works perfectly fine. Basically as expected. So we're just going to leave this at this is a content, and we will call this content. And now we're going to put in a UI Text Mesh Pro button, and we're going to call this one OK button. Excellent. And we are going to make this button have the outline. Outline. There we go. And this is going to be similarly white, full alpha to -2. Excellent. Now, we definitely have some issues with the size of the button. That's for sure. So what we want to do here is we actually want to put in a layout element where this thing has a minimum height of 30, and it has a preferred width of 300, and a preferred height of 30, and a flexible width of 0, and a flexible height of 0. I'm not sure why I put those in previously. I'm not sure they actually do anything, but we'll leave that as is because I know it works. We also want to change this to red, not the outline. We want to change the color of the image to red. There we go. And we'll make the text, of course, be white. Excellent. And we'll change this to simply OK. And then when we press the button, we want something very specific to happen. Now, let's see here. There it is. So all we want to do is we want to hit plus, and we want to have it be the modal window, so the parent object of all of these here. So the modal window, game object, set active to false. Okay. So we definitely want to make sure that this is correctly centered, which it currently isn't. I'm wondering why. What did I do differently here? Is it something to do with the vertical layout group? Yes, child alignment is set to upper left. It needs to be set to middle center. There we go. That's ideal. Oh, hi VLC. It had a little bit of trouble there. Now there's one more thing that we're going to want to put in here. That's a UI image. And we're going to want to set a layout element here. And we're going to want to set a preferred width and height of this at, I have 36 by 36. And yeah, I think that's okay. So all this is going to be is a very simple spinner. And I'm actually just going to import the sprite that I created for this. So I'm going to go to assets here. We're going to create a new folder, and this is going to be sprites. We're going to create another new folder, UI, and I'm just going to drag in the spinner sprite. We're going to set this to a sprite, 2D and UI. There we go. And I just created this with a simple radial gradient for the alpha and a light effect in GIMP. Super simple, not really all that difficult to do. And we're going to make that be the sprite here. And you can see that it looks like that against a black background. Looks pretty decent, if I do say so myself. We're going to call that the spinner. And we are going to need a quick script for that. There's very little that we actually have to do here, though. So we'll just hop in here and create a new C# script, and we will call that spinner. And it didn't open it. Thanks, Visual Studio. And all we have to do here is get rid of the start. We don't need the system.collections or system.collections.generic, and we will say public float rotation speed equals 1f rotations per second. There we go. And then all we do here is transform.local rotation times equals, because it's a quaternion and this is how you add them for some weird reason, quaternion.angle axis. We want to angle this at 360f in double parentheses, note that, times rotation speed. And we're going to multiply this by time.delta time, and we're going to rotate this around negative vector 3.forward. Okay, and that's it. That's literally it. So we'll just attach that script to the spinner object as soon as it compiles. We'll toss that in right here. Rotation speed at 1. And then if we run this, we should see that spinning. And then if we hit the OK button, yep, it's spinning. And if we hit the OK button, it should close. Perfect. So we will set the spinner by default to be disabled. And then we will set the modal window by default to be disabled. Excellent. In the UI manager, we will set that up. So the modal window here is set to modal windows game object. The content is here. The spinner is here. And the button is here. Excellent. So that should be fully functional now. And then as far as the actual login screen here goes, there is one more component that we're going to need. It's a kind of lengthy one to make, though. And, I mean, we created our initial UI here. I'm kind of thinking maybe initial UI creation is the goal of this, episode. It kind of changed, because at this point we're still quite a long ways away from actually creating our account. So I think we'll say that the initial UI creation was the goal, and creating the account will be next episode, but we're going to have to create the account creation window, and then set up the communications between the client and the server, and have the server created in the database. Yeah, I think that's fine. So we can put in a cut here, and that was our initial creation of our UI. Fantastic. And next episode, we are going to get into account creation. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.